Ja bym sobie Zajostorma obejrzał. I w ogóle z Zajostorma mamy 2 nowe materiały. 2 potężne materiały o newsach Eldenowych i tutaj dużo się dzieje. Nightrainowe przecieki, Bloodborne'owe przecieki, oho. Do tego jeszcze jakaś nowa nazwa kodowa, nowa potencjalnie grywalna gra. Dużo się dzieje wokół naszej, myślę, że niektórych ulubionej firmy tutaj, nie? W naszej społeczności. Także obczajmy co jest grane.
Alright, what's going on, guys? Elden Ring Night Reign is in a bit of a lull period at the moment. As we've now conquered 3 of the Everdark Sovereigns, look forward to the next, and scan the horizon for the eventual DLC. It's good to have times like this, where there's a bit of a cooldown before even more new content comes out.
Dobra, zbyt optymistycznie na to patrzysz, Zajostormie. Totalnie się nie zgadzam. Miyazaki co miesiąc powinien wypuszczać nową grę. Wtedy bym był szczęśliwy. Nie no, wiadomo, no nie da się, to jest niemożliwe, nie? Ale ja już mówiłem, dla mnie najgorszym tak naprawdę aspektem tego, co się aktualnie dzieje we Fromie, to to, że sobie ułożyli Night Raina i Duskblotsy obok siebie, rok do roku. Gdyby była gra singleplayerowa w przyszłym, no chyba, że będzie dodatkowo, sorry, to odszczekam, to moim zdaniem byłoby dużo fajniej, bo ani Night Rain, ani Duskblotsy nie wypadają chyba źle, no Duskblotsy się źle nie zapowiadają, Night Rain jest spoko, ale potrzebujemy jakiegoś takiego konkretnego mięska, za które pokochaliśmy tę firmę, a na razie na horyzoncie go nie widać, także to mnie trochę irytuje po prostu. I Night Rain to w ogóle jest tak zmarnowany potencjał, że ja pierdzielę, no już chyba można to sobie wprost powiedzieć, nie? Sorry, kurwa. Ja mam w tym niecałe 100 godzin i przestałem grać. I gierka ma potencjał na 1000 godzin, ale po prostu jest tam za mało bossów, za mało itemów i za mało losowości mapy. Sam core rozgrywki jest genialny, jest naprawdę świetny i gadaliśmy o tym wielokrotnie. No jaraliśmy się fest, przecież cały ten podcast nasz o Night Rainie to były 3 osoby zhypowane na Night Rain, ale no wypaliło się to, no już nie chce się tak grać. Będziemy wracać, jak będzie nowy content, jasne. I może taki był ich plan, takie było ich zamierzenie, żeby to nie była ciągła rozgrywka, jak ludzie, wiecie, grający w Fortnite'a non-stop, ale mnie wkurza, że mogłaby być, że to realnie mogłaby być gra jak Liga Legend, do której ludzie wracają codziennie na parę godzin. No ale nie jest. Po prostu nie jest. To będzie gra jak Monster Hunter czy Path of Exile. Też spoko, no ale jednak trochę mnie to boli.
We all know how ravenous FromSoftware fans are, and this lull has not stopped everybody from seeing what they can find about what's coming next. So today we've got a few leaks to discuss. New revelations about some of the new content coming over the next few months, 2 Elden Ring Night Reign, and if you can believe it, a new rumor about the future of Bloodborne, which has been making the rounds on the internet. So we're gonna break all of that down. But as we get started, a word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Opera GX. Opera GX is a fully modernized internet, so step up your browsing game today by checking out Opera GX in the link down in the description or in the pinned comment. And now let's get back into the video. Starting off today with Elden Ring Night Reign, we've been going through the schedule of Everdark Sovereign fights, and announced last week, I'm sure you guys saw, that throughout the rest of July, the rotation is going between the 3 that we've already had, Adele, Baron of the Night, Fulgor, and Noster, with the rest, Gladius, Libra, Augur, and Caligo, coming at a later date, which was not yet announced. Now, prior to the Everdark Sovereigns going live, many of them...
Kurde, też uważacie, że byłoby dużo fajniej, gdyby byli gotowi od razu z 8 i co tydzień ludzi wracali? To by było dużo lepsze i walili rotację po prostu co 2 miesiące. Dużo fajniej by to wyglądało, a teraz jak były 3, nagle przerwa...
yet announced. Now, prior to the Everdark Sovereigns going live, many of them had leaked, particularly the 3 that we got starting out the rotation. All 3 of these had leaked in their entirety. However, the other 5 that we're still waiting on had maybe leaked in appearance, but overall the details are very sparse. So not only did it reveal what these forms would be like, it also inadvertently revealed the order they'd come. So it's interesting that now we've gotten new details on the enhanced version of Gladius. Now, when the original leaks came out, we literally had nothing about the Everdark Sovereign version of Gladius, but now we have several of its moves, thanks to the investigation of data miners. Now, these are very rough, they're lacking particle effects, and we don't know if Gladius is going to change in form. But it's very interesting to see. Now, I'm not going to show any video, obviously, or there's a chance that this video will get taken down. I don't want to risk that, but I will describe these to you. Now, the new moves that have been uncovered have Gladius assuming a different stance. Instead of his normal way of using the sword by throwing it around on the chain, he pops the sword up and catches it in one of the mouths, much like Sif in Dark Souls. In this instance, he's holding the sword in the leftmost mouth, with the blade out to the side. One of the attacks he can do here postures the sword up with a sort of telegraph telegraph and then swings it in a forward slash from left to right. He then holds it there for a second and then does another slash right to left and then pops the sword up, throws it back on his back. He has another attack from this stance where he holds the sword up like he's going to slam it down.
Czyli trochę tak sifowo będzie się zachowywał lub w stylu Wilka Radagona, nie? Z tym mieczem. No spoko, zawsze jakiś dodatkowy moveset, ale no to musi być podkręcone, nie? To musi być trudne.
And then slams it down very hard, does a 360 with it in the ground.
Bo ja ogólnie uważam, że Gladius ma jeden z fajniejszych designów, jaki From wymyślił. Nie wiem, ja lubię takie bestie, kurcze, ale jednak nawiązujące też i mitologicznie trochę. Zajebisty jest Gladius po prostu. Tak mi się wizualnie podoba ten boss, a jednak no jest tym prostszym bossem raczej. No jest bossem wprowadzającym do gry tak naprawdę. Fajnie można było go podkręcić w trzeciej fazie.
And I'm pretty sure this one is a sort of grab attack based on the way the camera seems to follow it. So if you get caught by the original slam, you will stay on the sword while he does the 360 and then likely get launched off with the second slam. That's just what it looked like to me. Another stance that Enhanced Gladius can assume is tossing the sword into the middlemost head. The middle head catches the sword and holds it at a sort of 45-degree angle. It then turns the sword and launches it upward, and I assume this is going to be some kind of ranged attack, like sending out a shockwave or blast of fire. But what it almost looks like to me is some sort of parry. Like the middle head catches the sword and holds it at that 45-degree angle for a time, and then if you attack it head on or something like that, it turns the sword up to parry your attack and reflects it somehow. Again, all the effects are missing. All we have is the move itself, so we can't know for sure, but that's what it looks like to me. Now, the third and final stance it can take is of course tossing the sword to the rightmost head. From this stance, Gladius will do a sort of shovel slash, turning the sword upward, and then do a follow-up spin, stabbing the sword into the ground. So it looks like that's going to be the gimmick of the Enhanced Gladius.
Dobra, ogólnie podoba mi się zamysł, że masz 3 głowy, więc w zależności od tego, w której z paszczy pojawi się miecz, to masz zupełnie inny moveset, więc to jest samo w sobie takim telegrafem. To jest fajnie przemyślane. Pytanie po prostu, jak będzie z trudnością. No bo sorry, ja wiem, że jestem gościem, który po prostu chciałby, żeby wszystko było jak najtrudniejsze, ale no po to są tak naprawdę te trzecie fazy, nie? To ma być wyzwanie dla ludzi, to ma być coś, do czego oni wracają i nie zabijają tego za pierwszym razem, tylko no myślą z kumplami, nie? W teamie. Ej, jak to zrobić, kurde, jak go tutaj ograć? Mimo, że trochę skaft to było, no to ta trzecia faza Abela była zarąbista, nie? Z tym wirem, do którego trzeba było wskoczyć. To jest gra, w której gimmiki są jak najbardziej mile widziane.
Where it'll toss the sword back and forth between each of the mouths, and each one of those will trigger a different attack. So that's going to be a really good way to telegraph what it's going to do, depending on which head catches the sword. As of right now, I gotta admit, this looks pretty simple, but like I said, we are missing the particle effects. There could be a lot of shock waves associated with these moves, and we don't know how Gladius himself is going to change form. We'll just have to wait and see once the final version actually drops. But based on what I've told you, how do you feel about Enhanced Gladius?
Spoko.
Now, with all the announcements of the Everdark Sovereigns, one that has not been officially confirmed is Heolstor, the actual final Lord of Night.
Jak ten boss nie będzie miał dodatkowej fazy i nie będzie jakimś najbardziej pojebanym bossem w historii Fromu, to uważam, że zmarnowali potencjał. Oni powinni z niego zrobić Radana na sterydach. On ma tak zarąbistą estetykę, taki vibe powagi i kończenia gry, jakich mało bossów miało, jeżeli mówimy o finale. To jest miejsce, w którym można się naprawdę popisać i naprawdę to przemyśleć, ale kurde, no obawiam się, że tu może się nawet ta finalna forma nie pojawić, z uwagi na to, że on jest tak rozbudowany podstawowo. Ale mam nadzieję, że jednak mu coś dodadzą, nie?
And this has led many people to believe that he will not be receiving an Everdark Sovereign form. And I'm not gonna lie, I would be really disappointed if that's the case. We gotta have an ultimate version of this guy. He's way too cool, and honestly could use a little bit of a buff. Well, it looks like we are in luck, because also in the files of the game, look what has been found. Included in all of the icons in Night Rain
dobra,
are
no to
icons
będzie.
of an Everdark
To
Sovereign
wiemy.
version of Heolstor, the icon for the selection,
saved.
the icon for the map, and the icon for completion. So yes, it does appear like we will be getting an Everdark Sovereign version of the Night Lord. However, based on the schedule we currently have, it's probably going to be a long time before...
Nie zdziwię się, jak to będzie tak, że teraz dadzą 4 pozostałe bossy, czy coś takiego. Niby jakieś info było, więc pewnie dowiemy się zaraz. No, oglądamy 2 filmy, to może nas też poinformuje o tym Heolstor, ale poleciało jakieś info, że na koniec miesiąca chyba mają być kolejne bossy właśnie z lepszymi wersjami, więc pewnie polecą 4 kolejne i Heolstor będzie, nie wiem, na przykład za 2-3 miesiące jako taki ostateczny challenge do tej gierki, nie? Osobno wyjdzie, czy coś w tym stylu.
before we actually get to fight it. And really my mind just has to ask, what would that even be? How exactly could they evolve this fight? You know, his second phase already takes the elemental aspects of each of the other Night Lords. Maybe the enhanced version actually summons them. That's just the first idea that comes to mind, but that would be crazy. Like imagine he goes up to the air, opens up the sky to their selected arena, and then that Night Lord jumps through it and joins the fight. That would
To było kurwa fajne. Ja powiem więcej. Ja sobie wyobrażam, ale ja jestem pojebany. Nie wiem, czy From Software też by chciało coś takiego zrobić, jakby Gladius normalnie, wiesz, masz fazę ognistą i pojawia się Gladius, wyskakuje z tego nieba i on normalnie go dosiada i masz walkę, wiesz, z jeźdźcą Cerbera. O chłopie.
That would be insane, but honestly that would be the level we need to really cap off the ultimate final boss of this game. But what do you guys think Enhanced Heolstor is going to be like? How do you think that fight's going to change? And when do you think we'll get it? Do you think they'll wait till the DLC? Or just when the rotation of all the others is up? Y'all let me know down below. Now the final thing I want to talk about today, like I said, is actually a new rumor about Bloodborne. Yes, I know these pop up every once in a while and are almost never real. But the source on this one, surprisingly, is Moist Critical. Now you guys might have seen this and it was going around so much that I had to talk about it, but take a look.
Bloodborne's coming, you'll see. I do think one day it's going to come. I think Sony is so desperate right now. Sony is getting nothing but bad hands.
No dobra, ale to jest jego przemyślenia, a nie nic więcej. No, to tak ja też sobie mogę pogadać. Jestem źródłem mega leaków na Polskę z Bloodborne'a w takim razie.
They're going to go to Bloodborne. I know it's coming. But I don't think it's something that they've been planning for a while. I think it's going to be in response to the desperate situation they're finding themselves in.
Mi się wydaje, że dużo zależy od sukcesu Ghost of Yoty. Jeżeli to im nie siądzie, to wtedy może zaczną się nad tym zastanawiać. Nie wydaje mi się, żeby o tym teraz myśleli. Poza tym no, w tle pozostają dalej plotki o jakimś chaosie prawnym, w którym zarówno From Software, jak i Sony nie za bardzo chcą ze sobą współpracować na ten moment.
Publicly. There's something I'm not going to give any fucking hints actually. Never mind. I will get in big trouble for that.
O kurwa, to ciekawe
I was gonna
akurat.
go on a tangent about something, but it's not something I'm allowed to talk about at the moment.
Dobra, to jest
I
ciekawe.
know something about Bloodborne in general in the future.
Tylko ja się obawiam, że to będzie film Bloodborne w takim razie na przykład i to będzie preludium do jakiejś marketingowej kampanii związanej z remake'iem, remasterem czy czymkolwiek. To może być to.
I'll say that much.
Okay, so that's all he had to say about that, which I find very interesting. Now, the reason this had me at least raising my eyebrows was because Moist Critical isn't someone who needs to drop something like this to clout chase or make up some kind of leak to get attention. He doesn't need any attention. So I do believe him when he said he heard something. Now, what I would want to know is, who did he hear it from? He does say that he would get in trouble for talking about it, so I assume it would at least be somebody who could get him in trouble, and I do think that's at least worth considering. Now, I'm just gonna be honest, I don't think we'll ever get a Bloodborne 2. If I had to put money on anything that he might have heard...
Bloodborne 2 nie ma sensu. Ludzie chcą po prostu wersji działającej w 60 klatkach, może z upscalem, żeby te teksturki ładniej wyglądały, no bo wizualnie Bloodborne może fenomenalnie wyglądać w tych czasach i to już będzie spoko. Jak chcecie robić pełny remake, też jak najbardziej ludzie to przyjmą, ale to nie jest nawet konieczne. Wystarczy zrobić remaster tej gry na PS5 Pro albo PS6, zrobić edycję w ogóle konsoli. Przecież ile ludzi by kupiło pada zdesignowanego, tak jak wiecie, macie to Ghost of Yoty teraz, pada i konsolę zdesignowaną na Bloodborne'a. W chuj ludzi, to byłby system seller dla nich. No i tutaj pytanie, czy będą chcieli to zrobić jeszcze na tej generacji, czy na następnej? Czy w ogóle będą chcieli to zrobić, bo oni nienawidzą tego Bloodborne'a na razie, no.
Maybe a PC port. I don't even know if I'd go so far as a remaster. And as much as I agree that Sony does need a win right now, I just think if anything big with Bloodborne would have happened, it would have happened already. So I'm really not that hopeful. I know there was that news going around about a Bloodborne movie in the works, but they couldn't find a director, and it's still just in concept. Maybe that's what he heard. And even with Sony owning a much bigger portion of FromSoftware now than they did back then, I still just don't think we're gonna get that Bloodborne 2. I think it's very clear that FromSoftware has moved on from that, and with Duskbloods, Miyazaki has implanted that Bloodborne 2 vision into something else. So while I'm not hopeful, I would love to be pleasantly surprised. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments section below. Anyways though guys, that is gonna do it for the video today. I hope you enjoyed.
Spoko materiał, kurczę, tylko no, to jest zastanawiające. Moist Critical nie jest osobą, która by rzucała se tako słowa. Może biorąc pod uwagę jego tak naprawdę zarówno zasięgi, jak i wpływ na internet, no to miał okazję doczłapać się do jakiejś takiej informacji głębszej. Ufałbym mu w tym, ale obawiam się, że to może być coś popkulturowego, a niekoniecznie gamingowego stricte, że to może być właśnie jakiś film, serial, cokolwiek, komiks. On też w tym siedzi mocno. Chyba nawet wydawał swój komiks, pamiętam. Więc komiks Bloodborne'a jest, ale może jakaś reaktywacja projektu w tym stylu by nam się szykowała. No zobaczymy, no kurczę. Ale no nie jest to jakaś wielka poszlaka, która pozwoliłaby nam się nie wiadomo jak hypować, to na pewno nie. Ale mówiąc to, przejdźmy do kolejnego, moi drodzy, materiału z Heolstorma z dzisiaj, bo tutaj mamy już mowę o nazwie kodowej, o następnej grze. To jest grubsze w sumie niż sam Night Rain i Bloodborne. Let's go.
Hop back on the speculation train with me because today
Dawaj
we
to.
have the first signs of leaks for FromSoftware's next game.
Dawaj
Yes,
to.
we had Elden Ring Night Rain. Yes, we have the Duskbloods coming up. But what about their next major game? Their next multi-platform, full-priced, hopefully Souls-like game. Well, as many of us expect, that game should be coming sometime in 2027.
Ja jestem trochę popieprzony, ale mimo, że kocham Souls-like'i, to chciałbym zobaczyć From Software, teraz po Night Rainie zwłaszcza, robiący coś takiego, nie wiem, totalnie innego. Bo nawet nie pod Miyazakim, ale niech se zrobią Metroidvanie na przykład. To byłoby ciekawe, kurczę.
As FromSoftware does appear to be on an annual release schedule, and after having 2 side project games and the DLC removed from the original release of Elden Ring, there's no reason for us to suspect that that next game should not be coming in 2027. And today's leak also backs that theory up. So we're gonna break all of that down, we're gonna speculate quite a bit, but of course, as we get started, if you want to stay up to date on all things FromSoftware, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and now let's get into it. Alright, so let's get straight into the source of today's leak. This comes from Curacasis. Now, I didn't immediately recognize the name here, but this is the same person that leaked the code name for Elden Ring Night Rain just a few days before it was announced.
Oh.
Some of y'all might remember that it was codenamed CL.
Czyli
We
ma
have a
jakąś
similar
wiarygodność.
situation again, because overnight an article popped up, report from software deep into development on unannounced project codenamed FMC. So let's go through this article, we're gonna break it down,
FMC?
and then we're gonna speculate. They write, according to information we've been able to obtain, the Japanese studio FromSoftware, in addition to working on updates and DLC for Elden Ring Night Rain, as well as on the exclusive title for Nintendo Switch 2 called The Duskbloods, is also in the advanced stages of production on another, as yet unannounced project, a multi-platform game with the codename FMC, and they note that that is most likely an abbreviation of a longer codename. Considering the nature of the source these details come from, everything points to the project being at such an advanced stage that, unless it hits a delay, we should be able to play it no later than next year. Alright, so before we get into the rest of the article, there's a few things to note there. That number one, the codename FMC, we could sit here all day and speculate on what that might be an abbreviation for, but there's really no way to know. And they're definitely not talking about the Duskbloods here, because number one, whatever this game is, it's multi-platform, and number two, if this leaker did get access to the codename, they would have just said that it was for the Duskbloods, because that game has already been revealed. They would know what they were looking at. But they also say that the game is so far along, that they believe it'll be playable next year. Again, if we are looking at a 2027 release, that makes perfect sense as well. But that all checks out to me, let's keep reading. Codenames, while seemingly insignificant at first glance, can actually reveal quite a bit about what a mysterious project might be. That said, I must emphasize that all of my conclusions are purely speculative. Like most game development studios, FromSoftware assigns internal codenames to its projects. For example, the codename for Elden Ring was Great Rune, and in game files, it was abbreviated as GR. Below is a list of codename abbreviations that they know. So going down, we can see Dark Souls 2 was FRPG2, Dark Souls 3 FDP, Dark Souls Remastered FHD, Sekiro was NTCG and NTC. And now one note about Sekiro, the codename for that one actually revealed a lot because NTCG stood for New Tenchu Game. Tenchu of course being the classic ninja games that Sekiro was pretty much based on. So if somebody would have had access to that codename way ahead of time, they would have known
Ale zobacz.
about Sekiro.
Czekaj. Mówimy o FMC, nie? A Dark Soulsy i Armored Core'y miały F w nazwie. Nie no, kurwa, z takich okruszków jeszcze układamy obraz, przesada. Czuję się na takim kołpium.
Sekiro was NTCG and NTC. And now one note about Sekiro, the codename for that one actually revealed a lot because NTCG
Dark Core 4, normalnie. Dark Soulsy 4, estetyka jakaś gotycka, ale roboty.
stood for New Tenchu Game. Tenchu of course being the classic ninja games that Sekiro was pretty much based on. So if somebody would have had access to that codename way ahead of time, they would have known that it was going to be a big deviation from
Ty, ale FMC mogłoby na przykład znaczyć, że... Nie, kurwa, nie wiem, dobra, nieważne.
And focus on ninjas. Bloodborne's codename was SPRJ, Elden Ring GR, Armored Core 6 FNR, and Night Rain was CL. And of course this person did report that back in October before it was revealed in December. And we also made a video when that dropped. And they also note here that some FromSoftware games, in addition to the internal codenames used in files and network infrastructure, also receive more marketing-friendly working titles, such as Project Beast in the case of Bloodborne. They also note that to the best of their their knowledge, DLCs for FromSoftware games use the same abbreviated code names in their files as the base versions. And then they go on to say why it's probably not the Duskbloods, and they say that because whatever FMC is a project being tested and prepared for simultaneous release on multiple platforms. Keyword simultaneous. Duskbloods is very clearly being made to be played on Switch.
Nintendo.
And like I said earlier, if they got access to the code name and probably saw gameplay or whatever, they would have known that it was Duskbloods. But now let's get into the speculation. What exactly is FMC? Now, one thing you might have noticed there, when we were looking through the code names of older games, is that a lot of them start with F, specifically the Dark Souls games and Armored Core 6. Now, there was a rumor floating around last year, and it's even been popping up
DLC
again
Armored
recently,
Core'owe
that
miał być.
FromSoftware could be working on Dark Souls 3 Remastered. Now, personally, I don't think so. I think the reason that leak came out is because somebody got early access to Night Rain, and they probably saw the remastered Nameless King or Dancer of the Boreal Valley, and assumed that Dark Souls 3 was getting a remaster. So I do think that was the basis for that rumor, and I don't blame them for drawing that conclusion. But personally, I don't think that this code name would be for that, because number one, if that game was receiving a remaster, I doubt it would be being made in-house. I could definitely see them outsourcing
Wyobraź
that.
sobie, że oni teraz zarzucają remaster Dark Souls 3, ludzie by ich literalnie zajebali. Ja mam wrażenie, że gdyby zrobili cokolwiek związanego z Dark Soulsami, to ludzie by ich obsypali pieniędzmi. Co ty mówisz?
The same way they did for DSR. And I just don't think a Dark Souls 3 remastered makes sense, because number one, the game holds up just fine on modern hardware. Definitely does not need any upgrades
Ale
yet.
remake
But
Dark
also, we've had
Soulsów
two
2
side
byłby
projects
spoko.
in a row. Whatever FromSoftware's game is after the Duskbloods, it needs to be another big main chapter in their catalog. So I don't think this is Dark Souls 3 remastered. And I definitely don't think we're getting a Dark Souls 4. Now, like I said, the other thing that started with F was Armored Core 6. Like the article said, the code name for that was FNR. And I think if I was a betting man, I would put my money on this being Armored Core 7, or whatever the next upgrade title for Armored Core 6 would be, just like they've done for all the other Armored Core games. And there's a few reasons why I lean so heavily toward that. Number one, we didn't get any DLC for Armored Core 6, and the whole time that game was about to release and even after, they kept saying on record multiple times, hey, we're not done with Armored Core, we still have a lot of plans for it. They have actively confirmed multiple times they're making more Armored Core. And if they keep the same playstyle as Armored Core 6, that's plenty of development time for the game to be in an almost finished state by
Że
now.
Armored Core 6 to jest ostateczna gra o mechach trochę. Ona bardzo dobrze chodzi, ona bardzo dobrze działa, ona ma świetny kombat, więc tak naprawdę zrobić na tym samym silniku, na tym wszystkim samym, zrobić nowe bossy, nowe lokacje, to już by wystarczyło. Ale zobaczcie, że znowu, jeżeli mówimy o corocznych premierach od Fromu, to fani Soulsów, to by wtedy to się wkurzyli naprawdę, gdyby oni tak, dostali Night Raina, który jest grą multiplayerową i dla wielu dziwną, potem dostali Duskbloodsy, które są tylko na Switcha, potem dostali grę o mechach, która jest jednak niszowa i bardziej zrobiona pod rynek azjatycki, mimo że Armored Core 6 jest naprawdę dobry, no to kurwa, mielibyśmy 3-4 lata oczekiwania tak naprawdę na cokolwiek Soulsowego. Nie licząc DLC do Eldena, to w ogóle mielibyśmy 2028 wtedy, gdyby było coś nowego dopiero, to byśmy mieli 6 lat pomiędzy Elden Ringiem premierą, a faktycznym nowym Soulsowym produktem.
Another reason I think this is most likely Armored Core as well is because 2027 will be the 30th anniversary of the Armored Core franchise, with the first installment releasing in 1997. So I think that would be very fitting. And with Miyazaki being the main director of the Duskbloods, I think it would be a bit odd for him to release that game and then the very next year have another game where he's the main director. Now, could this be their next big dark fantasy Souls-like Elden Ring caliber game? Yes, it could. I would just hesitate to expect that, and there's a few reasons why. Number one, I think with so many other games they're working on, I think it is a bit soon to make
Dzięki
another one
Bocian
that
za
requires,
subika.
as they said with Elden Ring originally, all hands on deck. And I really think that Night Rain and even Duskbloods was a big testing ground for new features that could be coming to their next major Souls-like.
Potężne MMO od Miyazakiego nadciąga. Testowali teraz architekturę multiplayerową po cichu, żeby nas zaskoczyć. Nie no. Kurde, ja bym się nie spodziewał projektu o skali Elden Ringa, to na 100%, nie? Bo Miyazaki sam w wywiadach mówił, choć jest wielkim kłamcą, że nie chciałby obciążać tak studia, że nie chciałby znowu tak dużego projektu, że raczej chciałby uciec w coś mniejszego, nie? Wydaje mi się, że to będzie dalej coś dużego, to może być coś większego od Dark Souls 3, ale mniejszego od Eldena, no i będzie to jakieś nowe IP, nie? Ja nie wierzę w to, że Duskbloodsy są głównym projektem Miyazakiego, on na pewno pracuje nad czymś większym w tle. Nie wiem, czy to akurat jest to FMC, o którym tutaj gadamy, ale nad czymś tak.
and they still need time to make sure all of that works and implement it into the next game. Now, yes, the studio has grown significantly since the original release of Elden Ring, but, you know, Elden Ring DLC, Night Rain, Duskbloods, that's a lot. And I don't think the same team that made Night Rain also made the Duskbloods. And if they have a team working on the next Armored Core, you gotta add that in as well. How many people are left over to be working on the next Souls-like? So that's just where my mind's at. I think they do need a bit more time before an Elden Ring caliber game, especially when it comes to making sure all those new innovations actually work in these experimental titles like Night Rain, like Duskbloods. 2028, that might be enough time. But I also think that'll have its own code name, not really sharing a pattern with Dark Souls or Armored Core. But hey, as much as I want another Armored Core game, I would be pleasantly surprised to see another Elden Ring level game coming in 2027. But what do you make of this leak? Let me know down in the comments section.
Wiecie, co z tego leaku wnioskuję? Nic. Niestety, kurczę. Ale fajnie, że jest nowy codename. Jeżeli to prawda, no to pracują nad kolejną rzeczą. No, From Software na pewno chce teraz działać szerzej i więcej. To się pokrywa z tym, co faktycznie Miyazaki mówił w wywiadach wielu, że chciałby teraz wydawać różne gry, więcej gier, żeby inni też się wykazywali w jego studio, że nie tylko on będzie to ciągnął. I to jest ogólnie spoko, fajna wizja, tylko no musimy się przyzwyczaić do tego, że tych gier to nie jest tak, że to będzie studio jednego gatunku, studio jednej gry, jednej serii, tylko to będzie studio, które daje nam faktycznie dużo różnych rzeczy dla różnych graczy. I właśnie będą takie sytuacje, że przez kilka lat fani stricte Souls-like'ów mogą nie dostać dobrego jedzenia. Muszą poczekać na to pyszne danie.
FMC stands for. My mind goes, especially when thinking about Armored Core, to something like Full Metal something, but only time will tell. I know it's not a ton to go off of, but this is how things leak. This is how we end up predicting games. We get a little bit like this at a time, and each time the picture gets a little bit clearer. You follow a trail of breadcrumbs, and we just got our first one. Anyways though guys, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here, and I will catch you in the next one.
Spoko, fajna sprawa, fajnie, przynajmniej wiemy na bieżąco jesteśmy, co tam u From Software słychać.